Good afternoon. Hasn't it been a great 2 days? This has been more fun. And personally, I hope y'all have really enjoyed Nashville, and I hope that y'all come back real soon. On a serious note, however, advocates of education reform tend to be a reserved bunch. Well, not me necessarily, but most advocates. We obsess over data points. We write white papers. We make long speeches. In other words, we are a bunch of nerds. But you know, sometimes it might help if we just got angry. If we got outraged at some of the things that are going on that have a negative impact on our kids. If we got that fire in our bellies. In other words, if we were more like Dr. Steve Perry. Our next speaker is one of our most outspoken, knowledgeable, and effective advocates for school choice. He speaks with knowledge and experience of someone who was reared in a family mired in generational poverty, aided and abetted, I might add, by a failing school system. He speaks with the knowledge and experience of someone who started the Capital Preparatory Magnet School in Hartford, Connecticut, which you probably know has been recognized time after time as one of the best schools in the country. In fact, it sends 100% of its graduates, the vast majority, from disadvantaged backgrounds, to four-year colleges and universities. So, when people say these kids can't learn, when they say that these kids can't excel, Dr. Perry knows better. He knows from experience that if you set high standards, if you put the focus squarely on the kids, if you sweat every detail, that is from curriculum to tucked-in shirts, you can build a better school. Dr. Perry has the mind of a scholar, the passion of an advocate and activist, and the knowledge and experience that he's gained from spending years in the trenches getting it done. He speaks the truth, and without equivocation. Please join me in watching this short video which further introduces to you Dr. Steve Perry.
Every dreamer has a story. Dr. Steve Perry. Dr. Steve Perry, a mentor in the Dreamers Academy Speakers Resource Group, is a preeminent educator, author, TV host, and commentator. Prominently featured in CNN's Black in America series and in national forums, his passion for youth has fueled the dialogue on public education and produced positive change. Dr. Perry believes that every dreamer creates his own story.
You can be who you want to be. You can create your own reality. And if you allow the circumstances to define you, they will. I was born on my mother's 16th birthday, third generation of poverty, but I don't believe a life is determined by where you start, it's where you finish. I grew up led to believe that intelligence is static, that you can't get smarter. But along the way, there were people who believed in me.
He became captain of the football team and volunteered in politics. Perry turned playing hard into working hard. He earned his bachelor's degree, his master's in social work, and his PhD in education. His other education, lessons that he learned as a kid, prepared him for greater challenges.
Of the 100 families who lived in the same project that I did, I'm the only guy who I know who went on to college. Coming here today makes me want to get back to work and do what I do and give every single one of these kids a legitimate fighting chance. This is where we played. The only way to win was to play longer and harder than anybody else. You let people know that you don't come to lose. So when they told me I couldn't open a school, every single person told me no, except for the last person. That's all I was looking for, was one yes, and I got it.
Each school day in his home is a quick goodbye to his wife and sons, and Perry is out the door to his other kids at Capitol Prep.
I wake up at 4:45 in the morning and I drive kids to school.
You take kids to school?
I do.
In your car?
I have to.
You pick them up?
Every day.
Why? You're the principal.
I know. I'm the bus driver in the morning, though. And if you walk the halls, I'm picking up papers. I'm a custodian. You do what you got to do to get it done.
Connecticut has one of the largest achievement gaps in the country, with black students averaging 3 grade levels behind white students.
When we started Capitol Prep, the graduation rate was 29%. So the successes that we've had are rooted in the fact that we've been able to send 100% of our graduates on to 4-year colleges.
Run, Michael, run! Run!
We don't have a bench. Everybody's a starter. We need everybody on the front lines saving our kids.
Kids kind of look to him to kind of be that fatherly figure. You know, you look in the stands, your mom and dad's not there, but there's Mr. Perry, you know, the principal.
And to be that father figure, there's something else he's figured out about saving our kids.
Every kid I've ever worked with who's been in a gang said they joined a gang for one reason. It's not protection, it's love. When you don't love yourself, what you tend to do is look for someone else to validate you.
Validation, love, and perseverance is how Dr. Perry changed his circumstances. It's how he's teaching our kids to pursue their college education and defy the odds.
Teaching to me is the single greatest act of defiance, because every single day you are encouraging children to snap reality in half and look into another world. You are asking them to dream beyond anything that has ever been dreamed. You are telling them that the impossible is no more. You are looking into their little souls and telling them that they have such big dreams, and you're gonna fill them up with more. You're gonna give them the knowledge that they need, the desire they need, the inspiration that they need, so that on this day they will change the world.
Every dreamer has a story. Dr. Steve Perry.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nashville. Really glad to be here. Thank you so much, Senator Gresham. You know, I don't usually get introduced as an angry black man, but I'm cool with it. It's always cool. I'm used to talking to mostly minority, largely black audiences. This is kind of like that, if you took all the black people out. I appreciate it. I guess it's more like talking to the Country Music Awards. That's what, versus the BET Hip Hop Honors. Kind of the same, but different. You know, when I arrived at my room, they had country music playing. I don't usually listen to country music. I know that throws some of you. You were like, but we thought that you listen to country. No, I usually don't. Excuse me. But last night I did, for a lot of reasons. One, because some of the songs were kind of cool, but two, because I couldn't figure out how to shut them off. And it'd be kind of embarrassing to call down to the front desk, can you come up to room 1901? I don't know how to turn this stuff off. But one of the things that I took from it, honestly, as I listened, is how there are so many common themes in our music. So many common notions. There was a song, I even looked it up. It's Ray Lynn is, I think, the artist's name. And Ray Lynn was singing this song called The Love Triangle. And it was about a mom and a dad who had gone their separate ways, and they were trying to raise a little girl separately, and the pain that comes from that. And it's easy to see that while that is a well-sung country song, it could definitely be a hip-hop song. There's no doubt about that. And that's really why we're here, right? We're here because there are so many things that we have in common. However, we find ourselves dealing with what separates us.
In these times, unlike any other, it seems to be the order of the day to find something that you don't like about someone. It's kind of like watching the news, right? Not for the story, but to make fun of the woman who's reading the story, to say, why is she wearing that dress anyway? We find ourselves nitpicking at such a level that we don't allow ourselves to see that at the end of the day, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you're a person who cares about kids. And therein lies the problem. This conversation about education has nothing to do with kids. It has to do with jobs. We're not having conversations about what works in schools. We're trying to find ways to guarantee that grown people with certifications and degrees keep their jobs come what may. You know, I'm really proud to be invited here this afternoon because of the diversity of thinkers here. But I also want to be really clear. I believe, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that the most important president when it comes to the conversation of education was George Bush. I'm not saying that because his brother was sitting next to me and he's a lot bigger than he was. I'm not saying I can't beat him or anything, but he's a big dude. But I say that because for the first time in American history, we found ourselves having a conversation about accountability, something that we had never really discussed before. We were discussing that if I pay you to teach a child to read and write, she should know how to read and write. I'm often referred to as a controversial speaker, but I don't know what's so controversial about saying that African American kids are not born dumb. Latino kids are not some group of children who can't learn to speak English. That if you put children in a space that's called a school, it should actually teach children things. Our good friends who call themselves liberals or hypocrites, whatever, I don't really know what you call yourself when you say that you're so pro-public schools, but you send your child to a private school. It's kind of hard to call yourself something that you don't necessarily buy into. What so many of our friends have gotten away with is selling something that they wouldn't buy. It'd be like if you came to my house and I was there frying up some chicken, not the angry black man thing, just, you know. And I'm frying up some chicken. And then all of a sudden, I hand it to you and you say, oh, what are you having? That stuff will kill you. I got salad over here. What's controversial about expecting that what you believe is good for your kids should be good for all children? If you have the right to choose the best school for you, then everyone should have the right to choose the best school for them. No one should be cordoned off into an intellectual ghetto by the virtue of the fact that they have the zip code. A zip code. There were times in American history when numbers were put on children's bodies, but we don't want to go there, do we? If it was bad for the Germans, it's bad for the Americans. I say to you, I met a lot of representatives and senators. You got my book, it's called Man Up. I'm gonna need you to man up. I'm gonna need you to stand up for children in a very real way. This is about universal school choice. Not school choice if you know somebody who you can call at the charter school who can hook you up and put you on. Not school choice if you can buy your way into another community. But real authentic school choice, because the reason why we are here is because we have not fought fire with water. The fire that I speak of is the dumpster fire that many of the unions start. It's the same dumpster fire that they start all the time. Anytime somebody says that they're pro-school choice, they then start to call them all kind of foul names. You want to privatize, you're a privateer. Is that even a word? You just want to make money off of the charter schools, and they accuse me when we opened our school in Bridgeport of making $15 million. I was like, damn, I came up. Let's go. Except for the fact that I haven't made $15 million. Damn. And I'm not gonna. Damn. But the fact is that what we do is we allow them to persistently tell lies on not just the ed reform movement, but ed reformers. And so what happens is many people, and I'm talking to you this time, ours, you guys are supposed to be the ones in there who will be fighting for school choice because you want your child to be able to pray at a certain time. You want your child to go to a certain kind of school. Look, I'm just calling it the way I see it. I call balls and strikes. That's why the stripes in the suit. Then why would you allow somebody to paint you into an intellectual ghetto in which you do not stand up for what you believe? If you believe in school choice, you believe in school choice, especially when people stand against you. You prayed before we ate because there's a faith from which you come, in which you've seen someone be persecuted for their beliefs, for their stance, and that is what you're supposed to emulate. So how dare you, when you are elected to a position, stand down for fear that somebody's going to write a blog about you? Here's a hint. They are going to write a blog about you. And you know what? So what? Bloggers are weird. Of course they're going to write something about you. They're going to say something really silly like you stole money from someone or you just want to privatize public education. They're going to call you all kinds of names. And because you're Republicans, they're probably going to call you racist. And I'm not saying all of you are, maybe some of you are, but you got to deal with that inside yourself. But whether you are or not, the fact is that you're pro-school choice, and you have to be pro-school choice at all times, not just when it's convenient. I don't want you to try and find the convenient choices. Our children don't have time for your convenience. See, this dumpster fire that is what the teachers' unions put out is really pretty clear. Theirs is a really simple game plan. They want to make sure that every single person who calls themselves a teacher is in the teachers' union, period. And so when you start having conversations about school choice, what that means to them is if these kids leave, then they will need less people in what we refer to as the traditional neighborhood public schools. And if that's the case, then there will be less people to pay into this union, which will mean we have less cachet. If we have less cachet, then we cease to exist. Y'all can't have that. So every single time anything that feels like reform or accountability comes into play, it cuts into the presumption that they may have a smaller bottom line. And they can't have that, despite the fact that they do have that. In fact, over 300,000 people have left the teachers' unions over the past 8 years. And counting. And counting. I had a conversation one time with Randy Weingarten. She's the queen of her teachers' union. And she said to me, you know, Steve, I think that you and I could really work together. I said, I don't think so. She said, no, really, I think so. I think so. She said, because, you know, I think that, like, I understand where you're coming from. I said, as long as you are working to make sure that it's the Department of Employment as opposed to the Department of Education, we ain't going to be on the same team. To which she quickly said, hey, I'm friends with Al Sharpton. I was like, I don't give a... Listen, folks, I need you to understand that you are the only thing standing in between our children's future of success and failure. You're the whole team. You're it. When we know that less than 6% of African American children who took the ACT last year passed all 4 sections, it's a 94% fail rate. Of children who self-selected to take the ACT. It's a 96% fail rate in 2016. Some people, no, well, no, it wasn't 6%, it was 8%. My bad, 92. If I told you you had a 92% chance of not making it home in the vehicle that was waiting for you outside, you'd stay here one more night. So what we know is that African American children are doing poorly. We know that Latino children are doing poorly. But I want to break it to you, white people. Your kids ain't doing that well either. When 25% of all children who took the ACT or SAT, only 25% were college ready, that means 75% of everybody's kids has not been prepared for college in the United States of America. 75%. Are all of you bad parents? Are all of your kids dumb? I mean, some of your kids are dumb. Like, let's just be honest, right? Sometimes my kids are dumb. I do not understand what is so complicated about flushing the toilet. I have demonstrated toilet flushing in my house. I have gone over to my son and said, God damn, this is a toilet. This thing, you push it, watch, flush. You do it now. But that's not why they're not prepared for college. The reason why the majority of American children are not qualified and prepared for college in America is not because we need to have more carpenters and we need to have more hands-on learning. It's just because they were not prepared. It's because when it was pushed forward through No Child Left Behind that we had to hold educators accountable for, I don't know, educating, that this dumpster fire was created. Unfunded mandates. Nah, homie, it was funded. It's called Title I. They gave you the money. You just spend it on something else. So now you're saying it's unfunded. Can't call it unfunded if I gave you the money. Kind of what funding is. Where you're just making the teachers the villains. No, I just want them to teach. That's it. I just want them to teach. I want a math teacher to teach math. Whoa. Well, what you're doing is you just want to privatize education. You want to give the money to billionaires. You're in bed with billionaires. I've met a couple billionaires over the past couple months. A lot of y'all are doing well. I don't think too many of you are billionaires. Whether you are or not is inconsequential. The fact is that the reason why our schools are underperforming is because we are not pushing them to perform well. Why on earth are we continuing to send children to schools in which we know that 95 to 100% of the kids are reading and writing and doing math below grade level? It's unconscionable, folks. If you're not fighting for universal school choice, then you're not fighting for kids. Well, you just want them all in charter schools. I actually don't. Though I run charter schools now, I don't think that charter schools are the answer. I think they're part of an answer, but they're not the answer. I'm for vouchers, full-on vouchers. So if your state collects $10,000 per pupil to send a child to school, then wherever she or he goes to school, they should get $10,000, which includes but are not limited to public and private schools. See, because you can't call it public education if the public is not being educated. That's kind of the thing. It's only public education if the public is in fact being educated. If the public is being employed, call it public employment. But what has happened has been we've allowed, and it has been in large part the union, and quite frankly, many of our friends who call themselves legislators, not standing up and saying, hey, this is not true. There will be those who tell you that the reason why the children are doing poorly in school is because they are poor. You'll forgive me as somebody who grew up poor if I'm offended by that. And for those of you who also have lived at some point in a space where you've gotten to see a block of cheese or cereal that comes in a box that just says cereal, you too should be offended. Or if you're somebody who cares about people and doesn't care about how much money they make, then you should be offended, because that's pretty damn classist. To say that because a child's parents are poor, that this child is less capable of learning. If you believe that as an educator, then what you have done is you've shown where the only real place poverty has an impact on a child's ability to learn really is, which is in the mind of the person teaching them. If you believe that this child is inherently less capable, then you cannot teach them. You cannot see her for what she is. You can only see her for what she will never be. You've already imposed a limit upon her that she didn't earn. All she did was wake up in a community that she was born into, just like you did. When we were starting our first school, one of the things I did was I went to visit some New England private schools, because I, having grown up in public housing, figured that these kids were just smarter than I was. Despite the fact I'd gone to college and graduate school, I still was under the belief, because the notions are so real, there's a real miseducation that's underway, that I just thought they were smarter than I was. So I went and visited the schools, and I found that they weren't. And it's not that they were unintelligent, it's just they were kids. And they spoke a little differently than the girls and boys that I typically educated, but they weren't smarter by any stretch of the imagination. There are girls that I would put against them or boys that I would put against them. In a head-to-head competition, you give them the opportunity to learn at the same level, and you see what would happen. Black, Latino, and poor. After sending 100% of our graduates on to four-year colleges since we opened our first school in 2005, you can't tell me that the kids that we are educating are less capable than anyone else. Because we have the highest college-going rate possible. And so what has to happen in a space such as this is you have to be more than just motivated by speeches. You have to decide to do something with the information. You have to take this information back to your cities, back to your communities, and you have to understand that we have to put this fire of lies out. We can no longer allow it to happen where one group of schools is somehow seen as inherently bad. How could charter schools be all bad? Why? How could school choice be inherently bad? You can go to Walmart and buy as many types of toilet paper as you want. But you can't pick your child's school without being arrested? Think about this, folks. You met somebody today who was willing to break the law, not to beat the welfare system, but to beat one of the most classist and racist systems in American history, which is our education system. The American public education system is by design inherently classist and inherently racist. Look, y'all don't have to clap. I got a round trip ticket. Either way, I'm heading back to Connecticut. I say inherently so because only a system that was inherently disadvantaging an entire group of children would be able to replicate itself everywhere in this country. Everywhere in this country where there are African Americans in the schools, where there are Latinos in the schools, they are the most suspended, disciplined, and expelled. The most likely, therefore, to drop out, because those people who are suspended, disciplined, and expelled are typically the ones who are the most likely to be retained. And when you're the most likely to be retained, you're the most likely to drop out. When you're the most likely to drop out, you become the most likely to have a child out of wedlock. You're also the most likely to be incarcerated for longer, because poor people with little education are typically the ones who go to prison the longest. Meanwhile, there are charter schools and magnet schools and schools of choice and some of the scholars programs, like an ACE Scholars program, that takes children from these very same neighborhoods and sends them to fine schools. It doesn't change who their parent is, doesn't change their race, doesn't change their zip code. Just changes where they go to school. And changes the trajectory of their lives. Changes the future. Creates opportunities where we could have only dreamed. See, in 1635, when they created the school system, it made sense to send kids to the school closest to the house in between when you were growing, in between the growing seasons, in between when you had to go home and feed the chickens and milk the cows. Back then, when that was more the way in which people made money, than this system, this agrarian society, needed an 8-month school year, needed 6.5 hours of school. But here, in 2017, we need year-round schools. We need school options. We need online schools. We need any kind of school. We need a homeschool. We need options. There's a brand new education economy. For the first time in American history, rich or poor, black or white, are asking the same exact question. Where are you sending your kids to school next year? Where are you sending your kids to school next year? That, my friends, is the first sign of freedom. In a nation that says to the entire world in a declaration to bring us your poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe free, all we promise them is access to an education. All we agree on is that as parents, we all want to do better with our children than our parents did with us. We want better opportunities, but we can't break the bank to do so. We are at a time like no other, where those of you who are legislators and those of you who are advocates have an obligation to go to your states and fight for universal school choice, period. Keep it simple. No longer can a child be put into a space in which we know they will never come out. Who benefits from that? This is not about Democrats or Republicans. It's about our very existence. You say what you want, but countries such as South Korea, who, by the way, still have poor people there, are whooping the pants off of us. And it's not because their kids are born smarter. It's because they have a school system that is designed to ensure that every single child has access to a quality education. It's not that they're better at school, they spend more time doing it. We, as Americans, have to decide, have we had enough? In Connecticut, we passed a law a couple years ago where, because so many students were coming into community colleges incapable of testing into the credit-bearing courses, we had to pass a law that limited the number of remedial courses that students could take. That's the solution. Awesome. So it's against the law in the nutmeg state to have a student who was failed by the K-12 system take the remedial courses that she or he needs. Awesome. We have arrived at this time, people, where you have an obligation. I have an obligation to speak truth to power, to create opportunities unlike any other, to make sure for the first time in American history that every single child has access to a quality education, that their school not be determined by where they live. How draconian a notion. Imagine, if you will, going to take your mother to the oncologist in another community and them saying to you, no, you don't live here. You can't use that, doctor. Or you being in another community and you need to call on a police officer and they say, no, you don't live here. You cannot have access to the public services. Or you can't go to the public library because you don't live here. It is only because we are trying to maintain a system of employment over education that we have allowed this to continue. It is this fear that many people have who are educators, that if we allow poor people and black people, Latinos and Latinas, white people, regardless of where you're from, if we allow you to choose your own school, you will not choose the school down the street. And if that is so, shouldn't it be? Are we not still a democracy? If you get to choose nothing else as a parent, shouldn't you get to choose where your child goes to school? Why on earth would you have to pay for a public education? Why on earth would you have to pay for something that we know is a right in this nation? Why on earth would we continue to send children to schools that are inherently racist and inherently segregated because we've seen it to be so? What more data do you need? How many more court cases do we need? Here are the facts. Dr. King said in his last book, in his last chapter, where do we go from here? Community of chaos. He said, a school should be so good that you cannot tell who that child's parents are. As I found myself being invited to more and more events by Republicans, there are things I'm learning. Y'all don't trust the government? Well, you think you don't trust the government. Grow up as a black man. I don't trust it either. So the last person I want making a decision as to where I send my kids to school is somebody who's never met my sons. The only people who should be allowed to decide where my kid goes to school, I would say me, but my wife will disagree. So I guess we got to work it out at the house, but at least us. The fact is that it's almost embarrassing that we're still having this conversation. It's kind of embarrassing when you think about it. When the University of Phoenix, an online school, has 350,000 students, we're still arguing about whether or not we can send our kid to the school next door. That may, in fact, be closer to your house than your district's school. But because the district, this imaginary but very real line, is there, you have to send your child to a school that you just don't want your kid to go to. This is your time, folks. This is your opportunity to make things different. As I've spent more time in the South, I've learned more and more about rural schools and biscuits. Man, lady down there said to me, "You want a biscuit?" I was like, "Can I say no? Like, is that an option?" I am in Nashville, so it's like required. And then she brought out this biscuit. It's about as big as you, sir. I ate the whole thing. She brought another one. I'm like, "Sis, you gotta chill with the biscuits. I gotta speak. I'm gonna be on stage asleep." But what I've seen is that we haven't had a conversation about rural schools and children who have but one school option. We have opportunities to solve these problems. We know how to run good schools. The school that we started in Hartford, Connecticut, that was on U.S. News and World Report's top performing high school, that sent 100% of its graduates on to four-year colleges, is being attacked from the inside by the Board of Education. We had 2,700 children on the waiting list for 50 seats. And so someone suggested that we replicate the school. The Board of Education fought it. The union-backed Board of Education fought the expansion of one of the most successful schools in the state's history that educated almost exclusively Black and Latino children, and the people on the Board of Education are Black and Latino. My brothers and sisters, who were more committed to the employees of the organization and more afraid of accountability than they were the fear of what could happen if we don't find a way to educate more kids. So one of the things I've learned since I've had more conversations with people outside of the party that I've grown up in, which is the Democratic Party, is that what we need to do is spend more time finding out what we agree on. Because every day I work with kids. We have schools now in Harlem and in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And every day I see that the situation has become far more dire than it was before. There are issues that we used to have to wait until a kid was in middle school or high school to deal with. We're finding as young as 8 and 5 years old. We now have to train our teachers how to deal with trauma. Folks, I need you to hear me what I just said. I'm training kindergarten teachers to identify and support trauma. We're not talking about war veterans here. We're not talking about children who are growing up in some far-flung country. We're talking about children who are growing up in Fairfield County, Connecticut, Manhattan, New York, who I have to train to be able to teach them how to identify trauma in children. What more is it going to take for us to flip the tables over and say, enough is enough? If the school is not producing, it's not a school. It's a bomb shelter, maybe, a voting booth, sure, but it's not a school. Every single child, and dare I say, if only the kids who've never gotten it get it, then we'd be doing better than we've ever done before. In addition to that, we have to create more opportunities for people like me and others who are African American, Latino, to lead charter networks, to lead school districts, and to put ourselves in positions where another voice can be heard. We can't keep turning over the same soil and expecting something different to grow. You have to put something different in that soil, I'm told. And so what it means is this is a time for us to begin to look at what it is that we have in common. This dumpster fire of lies that you have heard about over and over. These catchphrases. Well, you know, the teachers spend $240 a year on, okay, so? Really? They're spending their own money. Who doesn't, man? Well, they're working so hard and you just want to make them. No, I just want kids to learn to read. That's it, man. I just want kids who are sent to class to come out feeling like they're smarter. Do you know how much it hurts to stand in front of a child who says that she's not smart? Who is convinced that she's not intelligent? To go from a kindergarten class where you ask the kids, who's going to college? And you see all the cherub hands raised up. You're like, oh, I'm going to college. And then work your way all the way through to the school. And you find the sixth graders and more hands have gone down. By the time they're in the 11th grade, if they've made it that far, a couple kids like, yeah, I think I'm going to go. Maybe I'm going to go to community college where it's against the law for me to take classes that I deserve. We're here because Governor Bush had a vision. He had a vision that if you bring together bright people who care about kids, something great is going to happen. Something great is going to happen. The something great that has to happen can't just be that you had these marvelous biscuits like I did. It's got to be bigger than that. You have to leave here with very clear directives on the policies that you will put in place back in your states. That you will not allow these lies, this dumpster fire, to disrupt you anymore. That you will start to ask the questions. You'll say, wait a minute, actually, a lot of the people who are fighting against school choice, actually chose their own child's school. And in some cases, those who say, well, I picked a public school. I picked a public school. Yeah, but even within that school that you picked a program that segregated your child from the general population. You ain't slick. So you had your child in the local high school, but you had her in the IB program. You had her in the gifted and talented program. Well, that's kind of like a school within a school, so technically you share the same building, but you're not sharing the same resources. Push back on people who tell you that the reason why schools are failing is because the parents don't care. Because I am someone who's found himself in the middle of quite a few disputes with parents who come in and say some pretty slick stuff. And they're not always kind people. But I've yet to meet a parent who didn't care about their kids. Every single parent I've ever met, to the best of their ability, whether they're a PhD or they got no D, whether they're rich or poor, black or white, every single parent cares about their kids. But not every single parent has the same opportunity to prove that they care about their kids. Many of us in this room are blessed. And I don't want to say it like you just happened upon your lifestyle. Many of you have worked very hard and you've earned your place. But I'm here to tell you that I was born on my mother's 16th birthday. Into the third generation of poverty that I'm aware of. I say third because I only know 3, but I'm going to bet it was deeper. And I guarantee you that my mother would not have had an opportunity to pay for me to go to a school, though she offered. I knew when she offered, she meant it as a gesture that she could not fulfill. I knew she wanted something better for me, but I knew I couldn't answer that question in the affirmative. Never again should a child and parent have to go through that terrible dance. We can change it today, folks. Today. You can. Each one of you can go back to your respective states and start to craft legislation that lets money follow the child, every single child, to any school they attend. If you want that school to be transparent, then put together the laws that say it is transparent, whatever transparency means to you. If you want every single school to take tests or not take tests. But don't let the rest of your discussion focus on who's going to get to keep their job. And so I say to you today, we have more in common than we have that separates us. You and I, at the end of the day, are not Democrats or Republicans, black or white. We're parents who don't always like our kids, but we always love them. And so I ask that you please extend to the other parents in this country the very basic expectation that they will be able to choose the best school for their child. And that you will be the change that we've always wanted to see. Thank you so much for your time and attention.